Here's the thing, John. Christian art is terrible. Christian parents are terrible prudes, and Eclipses are overrated.
Well, that's a heck of a start to a podcast, huh?
But I'm just spitting truth.
You know, we talked about like sharing a little bit about ourselves.
Yeah.
I think you just shared a whole lot about yourself. Right?
I just want people to know. I mean,
it's
not about me.
Your sunny disposition.
It's not about me.
Your positive outlook on life. Do you want to share real quick a little about you before we dive into the art discussion?
Okay. I'm Greg McKenzie. I am a theologian, a minister.
Is that why you're so depressed all the time?
Yes.
Sad.
Those are the two things. I won't say which is more the cause, but yes. Yeah. And your friend. I mean,
and disc golf extraordinaire.
Oh, please. Yeah. So, disc golf novice.
See, this guy gets serious about stuff, and I love it. I am all over the place, and you will get to know that. My name is John McPeters. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. We start playing disc golf together. I still got like all these other things that I'm doing. This guy is like laser focused and doesn't take long to be better than me. You're just like, let's go.
I just care. That's you know, it that you don't care. I can't speak to that. I just care.
So I'll just be the fun, goofy one, and he'll be the one that has really thought about this a lot.
You care when our other buddy makes fun of you for not winning.
Yeah. He makes fun of me all the time. Listen, have you ever played, I'm talking to the peoples out there, a sport, a board game, whatever,
I try
and
to play board games, yeah.
someone constantly is laughing at you while you melt down and do terrible? Maybe that needs to be the discussion on the podcast.
How should we treat one another when we play?
Yeah, Ryan. I just called him out just like that.
Yeah.
He will be spoken of more in this podcast because of his feelings on art.
That's correct. Yeah.
So, all right, let's frame this up. Let's start with what happened recently at a service.
Yeah.
At our church service. What we've done, and I'll let you kind of share the story of what we did and what happened. And there's so much more that this is going to be about. But that could maybe start the conversation.
Right. We added art for the first time to our service.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the sum of
it. That's true. That's true.
So this was for Lent, Easter season, and we one of our church members suggested that we put up some art from an artist that she had found, and you and I had already been talking about
Scott the Painter, I believe.
Scott the Painter.
Scott,
do we have a URL? You're just gonna have to
just go on Instagram and look up Scott the Painter, I believe is what it is.
Got it. Yeah. Great stuff.
Yep.
Very, very cool. We did a whole Good Friday Stations of the Cross thing around this art. It's designed for that. It's very, very cool. But since you and I had already been talking about, we really need some more art in our worship space.
When she brought that to us, it was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, it was like, oh, well, this isn't our idea.
Shout
now.
out. Thank you, Lauren, if you're listening.
Yes, you're our hero.
Thank you.
For taking the bullet.
Yeah.
I mean, not that our church folks are opposed to it. Mm-mm. It's just not their custom.
Correct.
We have a very austere situation in our sanctuary.
But wouldn't you say that much of the church would be similar?
I think a lot of churches are. I think a lot of churches, they lack an aesthetic theology.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times, at best, they default to putting up like slogans and verses. And
so I come from a charismatic background, and we had the banners flying, baby.
Exactly. Yeah. And like that stuff's not bad, but in terms of art, in terms of what it contributes to the feeling, the vibe of being together and worshiping in a space, it just doesn't. For me, it doesn't. It
doesn't provoke thought and stuff like that. Yeah.
Nah.
But this did.
This was very provocative. In fact, it provoked one visitor to get up and walk out.
Yes.
Some of it, some of the themes of the cross that he expresses artistically, the symbolism. There was the first one of the 12 stations of the cross was like a chalice with a skull on it and a snake wrapped around it. I mean, it's evoking the Garden of Gethsemane. It's evoking sort of the threat of death and the evil that Jesus is confronting, and I loved it. It was off-putting to some people, and he found it. I think he said, "There's a lot of evil in this place," and walked out.
Yeah.
So
it's weird because I didn't have any of those vibes, and then a few people said, I don't know if that first one with the chalice, and again, like Greg said, chalice, a snake wrapped around a skull on it. I don't know if uncomfortable is the right word, or just not sure how to process it. Yeah, not sure how to process it. Because we have no practice.
That's the thing, is like art is it's intended to provoke interpretation.
Yeah.
And interpretation is a skill.
Yeah.
And churches that are unaccustomed to that practice and that kind of engagement with their surroundings, their visual surroundings, they're just kind of stumped. They're just left with like, that's a thing, and I don't know what to do with that.
Yes, and I think that's a big reason why so many churches, they don't know what to do. The leadership doesn't know what to do. We don't know how to disciple people into it.
Yeah.
And, you know, there is, by the way, we share this space with other people. I don't know if you hear that out there in the internet world, podcast world.
There's some giggling.
But if you hear some giggling, it's not us giggling under the mic. It's other people and stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Because we're inclusive.
We're just so welcoming.
We make space for others.
People.
We don't post signs recording now.
No, they don't. Yeah. Anyways. I kind of lost track. But yes, but there's no discipleship. But also there may be where pastors, leaders, whatever, they've never been discipled in stuff like that, and we don't know what to do. And then there could be the fear of having images, graven images. Just there's all kinds of I think thoughts when it comes to that, and who knows?
Well, I know.
Did you just say wino? Wow, you're oversharing.
That's a different conversation. That's the next episode.
All right, let's do it. All right, so with that happening, and even then having the people in our church not sure how to process and things like that, how does the church, if people are listening, how do we help people process some of this stuff? And then let's just talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Like how do you disciple someone into learning how to appreciate art? Okay, let me take it one more step back. Sorry. Why? If someone's going, why do I even need to do this? What would you say to them?
Well, so I can answer on a personal level, and it's because I love art. And a lot of people love art. Art is human creativity. It's expression of our image of God, our likeness to God. It is good. It's creation, right? Yeah. And whenever it's expressing our faith, that's just another form of bearing witness.
Yeah.
And we should embrace that. As just a bottom line, we should be excited about people who have gifts and talents, and they put that into art. And
instead of being unsure.
Instead of being unsure, or instead of just being kitschy, instead of just, pandering to the market of, I don't know, what is it? What is that stuff when you walk into a Christian bookstore and you see all of this just trash that is so
wow.
kitschy?
Tell us how you really feel.
I'm just sharing my opinion.
I wanted to talk about some of this. Do we bunny trail down that a hair as we're talking about the why behind?
Yeah.
I agree with you that I'm careful to say this because everyone has their own things they like about art, but to me, in my personal taste, most of it is hot garbage water. It's just blah,
right?
Whether it's film or pictures or paintings or whatever that you see in a store.
Okay, so art is subjective, interpretation is subjective.
Correct.
You like what you like. And it's also true that there's a standard of beauty. Art critics exist for a reason. Film critics exist, music critics. It's
so you would totally disagree with someone that's it's just all in the eye of the beholder.
Of course.
Yeah. I would too.
But how can you not? Everybody understands that classical, famous, beautiful pieces of art have been universally appreciated across culture, across time. That itself is a perfect demonstration of the fact that there is a standard of beauty. There are things that we know we collectively understand are beautiful. And you can be a person who goes like, I don't get that. And we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there is really beautiful art, really beautiful music, really amazing cinema. Across the spectrum that most people would say that's better than average.
Yeah.
That's not just something that somebody threw together for consumerist reasons, because that's what drives so much of the kitsch. That's what drives so much of the garbage.
Well, so back to the church, like that. So when we're talking about films, let's go there if you don't mind. Facing the Giants, Fireproof.
Yeah.
We didn't see the new one that everyone liked, the Jesus Freak one, and I can't remember what the
name
of that
one.
is. Oh, okay, so you can talk about it.
Yeah, I can talk about that.
Okay, but prior to me mentioning that one, all these other ones, like, and if you like them, I'm glad that you do. Like, I'm not here to poke fun or whatever, but it's just.
But let's be clear, pandering to the inspirational sports market
is
pandering.
Yeah, it's like. Yeah, I mean, I attribute it to the Hallmark Channel that my wife watches, and I love you, babe. She hopefully is listening to this at some point in time, but it's predictable.
Yeah,
the actors and actresses are not always. Most of the time, are just mid. Occasionally, they have like some star that shows up there, which we do in Christian film or whatever, whatever you want to call it, Christian film. But you can predict the outcome. It's just kind of the story's playing. I'm not really thought provoked. I'm not really challenged in any way.
Yeah.
Like it's just nah.
No. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's playing to themes and feelings that it's understandable. You can make some money doing that. You can make people feel some kind of way doing that. And it is not the thing that art does.
Yeah.
Not the kind of art that I'm talking about. Right? There's a time where you didn't have to say Christian art.
When I said it, that's what I was thinking.
You can just say art, right? The greatest pieces of composition of the late Middle Ages. You're thinking Beethoven, Mozart, right? Handel. These pieces of music are written explicitly in honor of God, with biblical themes explaining them, alongside them. And it's not Christian music. It's just great
music.
music. It's just a phenomenal creation by a composer. And somehow, like, we're talking about American Christianity here. Right?
So we're
talking about modern American Christianity.
Is this a marketing kind of?
I don't know what we fell into. I really
happened?
don't know what the explanation is for how we partitioned ourselves off in this little corner of substandard production.
Yeah.
But we did. And you know this because you can play that art. You can display that art. You can show a piece of great faith-themed classical art to someone who is not a Christian, and they'll go, wow.
That's good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right? And then you can play a piece of contemporary Christian music for that same person, and they'll go, what is this garbage?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's not garbage because it's Christian. I'm a Christian. I believe in many of the things that it's saying. Certainly not all the things that it's saying.
Yeah.
It's like some of that stuff I find moving. Some of it I find powerful, lyrically, not musically, almost ever.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but the comparison stands.
Yeah.
It's not just phenomenal art.
Yeah.
It's and you can tell like that. There was an artist, I think it was Derek Webb, if I remember correctly, but a while ago, I think he tweeted about playing this game where you listen to you're in the airport and you listen to the first few bars of a song and you go, Christian music or not Christian music.
Yeah.
And you can pretty much tell. Because it's canned. It is this totally expected, tame, uninteresting, market-driven form 100%. Of musical expression.
Yeah. Whenever I was younger, I had this, and I think you had a similar situation because we've talked about some of this before. But I grew up. I played music. I grew up in a family that my father played music. His father played music. My brother played music. We had Hillsong, the old school Hillsong on one side, and the Beatles on the other. And so like Dad taught me some really good music. But then whenever, so a couple things, a very critical moment in my high school years, whenever I had a youth leader go through our CD booklet. Did you remember when you had those? Everyone had those.
Oh yeah,
you had like 100 CDs,
in my
200
truck,
CDs,
yeah.
whatever. Everyone had their, and I had to have a conversation with us on the side, me and some other guys, because why would you listen to this? Why would you listen to that?
Policing the consumption.
Yes, correct. And they didn't like say there's no reason you cannot do that, but we're told not bring them into the youth group again, so forth and so on. But then I decided to really like get serious about my faith, and I like went straight Christian music for a year or two, and I don't. You've done that. You did something similar.
I did.
So share that, and then we'll.
Yeah, it was an important part of my journey as a young man, where I just felt like I needed to. This was music and television and movies, where I was like, I gotta unplug myself from some of the feelings, and I was just feeding negativity in some ways. And so I shut off all of that stuff for over 2 years. And it was only Christian content, and like I know what that sounds like. I don't regret it. In fact, I really appreciated like living through my friends pushing back and going like, what are you doing?
Same here.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was good for me to have to explain like this is me. I mean, this is just about my own struggle with, with film, like visual sexual stuff, visually, violence, with fueling my imagination, with listening to music that was very sort of negative and gloomy in the way I was processing my emotions, and music that I love and appreciate.
Yeah.
But I was just so plugged into that it was healthy for me for a time to go like, let's turn that off and see what happens.
I think so. I had this same situation. I don't know if it's a good analogy, but almost like when you first get married and you have like all that time with your wife and you just kind of, you're doing that. And then as the time goes on, you, I guess, remember some of the things. I don't know. At least that's what I did. I started playing music again and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I do remember during that time of only Christian music being very discouraged at the absolute lack of quality.
Yeah.
Like compared to the other music that I listen to. Like I'm like trying to like Chris Tomlin. And Chris he has got some great worship songs that he's written that I don't like musically necessarily, but great lyrically and all that kind of stuff. But it's like I couldn't find like hardly anything that I was excited about.
Yeah.
I just felt like I needed to do it. And I agree with you that I think it was good for me. But
so
isn't that sad?
Yeah, it is.
How are we the people that have the Spirit of God full of creative artistry, and we're the ones putting out, we should be like leading the way.
Yeah.
And we're the ones that's putting out the most mass marketed. Now there are Christians and stuff that put out good stuff now.
Of course.
There
always have been.
Yeah.
Like I've always been a huge Rich Mullins fan.
Sure.
Like my youth minister trained us rightly in the Lord,
he was one that I listened to.
Rich was an astonishing musician, but like non-Christian musicians would say that too. Like they would recognize this guy is. He's good. When he died, there were a number of people that like celebrated his musicianship that weren't Christians. They weren't. He was just poetically, lyrically off the charts, unbelievable stuff.
He was different.
Yeah,
if
you listen to it now, you go like, "Well, this is definitely the '80s." But
for sure.
But for the time, for what it was, I really appreciated the artistry that was there. In his lineage, Caedmon's Call was really, really significant for me. I think that
I never listened to them really.
They were pretty good, man. Like very good lyrically, and in a lot of instances, really good instrumentally.
Okay.
This dates me, but I was super into ska, Christian ska. And that's very much an alt scene. It's it's a different kind of musicality. It's not playing to that Nashville contemporary Christian music scene. And I spent a lot of time with those albums.
Five Iron Frenzy.
Five Iron Frenzy, Insiders, OC Supertones. Yeah.
As you were talking about that, I was like thinking back to where whenever I was a teenager, there was Tooth and Nail Records. There was a ska, a punk, a hardcore scene that was cool. And I'm sure there still is a lot of some of that out there. I don't know.
I think some of it is, I don't know. There's ebbs and flows, right?
Murfreesboro, where we live, had a pretty okay scene, and it was cool. Back then, people who did not follow the Lord would come to shows because it was just good music.
Yeah.
And we'd sit outside of Red Rose and smoke cigarettes and just listen to whatever, and people would come, "Hey, what's up, bro?" And because it was inspiring, it made you think. It was cool. It was good music.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a cool scene.
Yeah.
We had a similar thing in the city where I lived. There was a kind of a small venue that opened while I was in high school that was packed. I mean, it was a second story deal, and it was a bunch of indie Christian rock, just one album kind of joints.
Yeah. Yes.
But I mean, the whole place was just like you could feel the I-beams of the floor like moving. And it was awesome. It was a great experience. No shade being cast toward that kind of the underground. You know what I mean?
Not at all.
Like the indie Christian
There's definitely
scene.
good stuff. Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the stuff that's making money, the stuff that everybody thinks of when you think of the stuff that plays in the airport, and you go, I don't even have to hear the words. That's Christian music.
Yeah.
And it just hasn't relented. It's the same stuff. It's the same feel.
So what do we do?
Yeah, so an artist like say his name again, Scott the Painter.
Yeah.
That's
I think that's right. I think it's Scott Erickson. That's Scott the Painter.
Right.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. It's not that. It's very, and that was part of the challenge for our church was that the art is very provocative. Yeah, it's
sliced
edgy,
in half lamb.
Yeah, it's very different, very highly symbolic, not easy to consume, right? And so finding that stuff, curating it, introducing it, and then being intentional about processing it together. So something like it's perfect that he designed it for a Stations of the Cross service, because that's what you need. You need a period of time dedicated to getting people together, saying, "Hey, everybody, I know we've never done this before. This is very different. Yeah. It's a strange experience for some of you, and for some, it's so exciting because they're so into art and they're so longing for precisely that thing where they're with their brothers and sisters in Christ and they're going like, what do you see here? What is this doing to you?" And then going through that experience and kind of fumbling through it and not knowing what to say and being like, that's different. And just doing it in an intentional way, processing together, and then processing that everybody together, right? So what was that like? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And those kinds of conversations, those interpretive communal experiences are really, really powerful. Yeah. And our feedback was, I didn't hear anybody say anything negative about it. It was like, this was really interesting. This was really cool, right? It's obviously not the only thing we do, but it's something that we did.
But that processing is the key.
Yeah.
Like just putting up some cool art in your church.
Yeah.
So the church that I grew up in I came from like this charismatic Pentecostal background. Mm-hmm. It was hyper artistic. Like everyone played music or did some kind of, like, it was wild. And we had,
y'all do the dancing with flags?
Yeah, well, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. We had, we had art like in the foyer and stuff like that. But I don't remember, and forgive me if anyone's listening, and maybe I was just too young to remember, but I don't remember having space to process it. And one of the things I was thinking about was we had dancers. We had a dance. They didn't do flags, actually. It was a dance team, like that, but they had their dancing gear. And as soon as the first chord was struck, scare the crap out of the visitors probably. Like this group of 15, mostly women, would go out down the aisles, and they had all this choreographed dance and all this kind of stuff. But I was thinking about that. I was like, but I don't know if, from my memory, and maybe we absolutely did, we had spaces to process or to talk about the why, because I didn't appreciate it back then.
Yeah.
I was like, this is goofy, this is weird, I don't want to invite my friends. But if we had those conversations, like, this is an artistic expression, this is, and it was like, there was a lady that was a phenomenal dancer, and it was her heart to express her art to the Lord in worship.
Right.
And I just didn't really think about it like that. I was just like, oh, okay. So just throwing something out there or putting it up, I don't think is super helpful.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be honest about the difference most of the time between local congregational expressions and the kind of art that we're talking about, like professional artists, people who are really, really talented. That those people are members of churches somewhere, and so those churches are lucky.
Yeah.
But a lot of times,
and they don't know what to do with them a lot of times, though.
No. Yeah. But a lot of times it's a little cringy when someone does something, because you go like, "That's sweet, and I appreciate that, and that's welcome here." But it's also not the same thing. So I just don't want to ignore that dynamic as we talk about this, because there are two things there. There is the general dynamic of the church as a whole expressing itself artistically, which is good, which is really, really good. And then there's this conversation that we're having about stuff that's aiming at art, that's aiming at, and I just don't have a better word for it than that, but it's like an artist who designs something to give to the church very broadly, to say, look at this, contemplate this, this is meant to do something, like a musician who's producing something that's meant for broad consumption. It's a different level, and the problem that I feel like we're pushing on is at that level where it's supposed to be professional musicians, you're still getting this kitschy stuff.
Yeah. And and you get it. It's everything is just kind of reproduced to this. Like Bethel comes out with their sound, and everyone else just kind of follows suit.
Yeah.
It's just it's very U2 or whatever it is at that one time. And there's just not a lot of creativity where you're like, wow, I haven't heard that before.
And is it that there's not a lot of interest in the creativity? I mean, it's like a chicken egg thing, right? Because again, we're saying you're playing to the market, which means that broadly speaking, there's a whole bunch of Christians and churches that are like, yeah, that's what we want. We want.
I agree.
Okay.
But then we know that there are good Christian artists out there
of course.
So how do we help to bring them in? Someone's on Instagram, right? Like that's amazing, Yeah. But the masses might not appreciate it yet, which
I don't know. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
That's the interesting tension between pop and that which becomes classic, right? Because that which becomes classic might or might not be popular in its day, but comes to be recognized again across cultures and across time as something special. But pop music, pop art, pop expression is designed to hit those three chords.
Yeah.
It's designed to be palatable as broadly as possible, to make as big a market as possible, kind of bob along, right? And so there's an interesting tension between those two things, because both are about broad appeal.
Yeah.
But one of them is not attempting the same thing as the other.
Yes. What about your boy that broke the mold?
Yeah.
The country guy, the guy was like, oh, what is that guy's name? Da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember the lyrics.
I'm drawing a blank. What are we talking about?
I'm talking about the guy. Oh, this is great radio. Oh, what is his name? Working all day, bull pay. Can I say that word?
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What's that guy's name?
Oliver Anthony.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Like
that. Why is he my boy?
He's not your boy.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying. No, I don't know if you even. You don't. I'm not saying he likes him. Sorry. No. I just said your boy. But like that guy did break the mold in the sense of, I'm not saying I super loved him, but I thought it was fine. I thought it was like that the masses went, oh, there's something authentic there. There's something real there. So I do think it can happen.
Ooh, let's talk about that word.
Okay.
That authenticity.
Oh yeah.
Is so much of what's at stake here. right? And not just in his appeal, but in what becomes great art.
Mm-hmm.
The authentic expression that isn't nerfed by the desire to make it marketable.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that there are a bunch of Christian artists that would happily get on a mic and say, yeah, our producers and our labels make our music worse.
Sure.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I get that. I
Yeah,
get that.
yeah.
Right. But there's also the drive to be pop.
Yeah.
Like, there's lots of artists, Christian and not, who are choosing to play in that lane because it's the most lucrative.
Yeah.
Not because it's the most authentic. And maybe you can be authentically pop. I'm not going to say one way or the other on that one. But I just long for Christian art, broadly speaking, to lean into that sort of risky business of authentic expression. If we did that, there would be so much more provocation happening.
So if you're listening and you can help encourage people who you might have pushed to the sides or not sure what to do, encourage them. So if you let me shift gears, you said risky business.
Yeah.
This made me start thinking. So we're dads.
Yeah.
We love art. We love music. We love
And
paintings.
Christian parents are prudes.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. So that's the next one. Where does the eclipse fit in? Okay, let me.
Well, no. Okay, so go there, but then we got to talk about Ryan.
Yeah.
Who?
Okay.
That's
fair.
Our,
Okay, let's do that first.
Abusive disc golf buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Who?
Yes. Verbally abusive, massively.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to go to counseling.
He's mean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a wonder that we play with him.
Yeah. I hate you, Ryan. If you're listening,
Ryan's the best. He's the
just
best.
kidding.
But Ryan, whatever it is in the human brain that provokes positive response to artistic expression does not exist for him. Every piece of art he looks at and he goes like, huh.
Yeah.
Just
There are
didn't do it
people
for
out
me.
there where it doesn't quite. But I also wonder if he's like made himself like the non-art liker to where like now if he actually likes something,
It's a shtick now.
But there are people that don't.
And so this relates to the eclipse because
Yeah.
there's a similar thing broken in me
Yeah.
where, I asked a question on Facebook about I said, anybody who is driving to see the eclipse in the zone of totality, can you tell me why? Asking for a friend who is totally perplexed, right? Because I couldn't care less.
This guy says it gets dark every night.
There's a total eclipse. There's a total eclipse every single night. Somebody goes, we were talking about it after, and somebody goes, it was crazy. The temperature dropped for a little while. And I was like, that happens every night.
It's like
the entire earth is between you and the sun every night. That's an eclipse.
my gosh.
What are we doing here? Okay, so
you just took a dump on everybody's fun right then.
A little tongue in cheek there, guys.
Yeah.
But seriously, it is for me and I don't like it. Like my philosophy with food is if I don't like something, it makes me sad because I want to like as many things as possible. What's not it's the bet. Liking more stuff is better. Enjoying more stuff is better. I don't like the fact that when I visited the Grand Canyon with my family, I stood at the edge of the Grand Canyon and my genuine internal response was, look, a big hole in the ground. I just don't care.
See y'all later.
Yeah. I'm out of here. But it's the same thing with the eclipse, right? There are people that are just filled with wonder and awe at these natural phenomena, and I look at them and I go yeah, that's the moon moving in front of the sun.
Oh my gosh.
That's what that is.
Boo.
So, but to connect that with Ryan's experience of art, I get it. I get it that there are people who they're just not moved by art in the way that I am.
Yep.
So
if you're one of those persons,
repent.
The kingdom of God is at hand. At least if you don't, I would say try to, but if you don't, maybe don't take a dump on everybody else by posting Facebook posts about like how the eclipse is so bad.
Yeah. Learn not to be like me. No, on a serious point there, Ryan participated in our Stations of the Cross.
Absolutely.
And
I appreciate
he wasn't about like, this is dumb, I don't care. It's not
fully
that. It's just
participated.
he's like, I don't really get it, but I'm with you guys. And
That was cool.
he had amazing insights. Like he actually, as a part of the interpretive process, was really important.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so speaking of, I don't know if we use the word risque, but
We're going to porn, right?
yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's straight. No, so as parents wanting to, and not just parents, I mean, whether we're leaders in the community or friends or whatever, wanting to introduce art into other people's lives, the elephant in the room or the whatever is, what do we introduce?
Sure.
Because there is art that is incredibly violent or very sexual or whatever. Is there too far?
Yeah.
For the Christian community and then that's a whole nother question, like that, and then like we're raising kids that are in middle and high school, basically, and like, so I'm just going to open it up there.
Well, so I want to know what you think about this first off,
okay.
but it's not really two different questions. It's that there is us trying to decide where the line is. Mm-hmm. If there's a too far, where is it? And then our kids provide a really useful way of figuring out what that is.
Sure.
Right. They're this part of our life where we're hypersensitive to
absolutely
the consequences of this question. And so I don't not two questions, but sort of majorly over in the Venn diagram of
kind of together. So I was just thinking about when you said that, we're talking about introducing film into our church and how to, and what's the best way to do that. That's a real question. Mm-hmm. So like, what do we introduce is...
Can there be bad words in it?
Yes, exactly. Could there be a little bit of nudity? Could there be violence? I mean, people all over the world watch The Passion of the Christ, which is terribly violent. And we all said, violent. Yes, that's amazing. And then someone puts on, what is that popular zombie show that I never watched?
Oh, Walking Dead.
Yeah. And, no, that's too violent. You know what I mean? Like, like so how, what places, areas of caution is there? How do we go about doing that? Do we just go ahead and, we were talking about maybe showing silence for the first film, which is pretty tame, I think, except for there are some like gruesome, like on the cross, like, kind of things. And I think it's rated R as well. And it's Scorsese. So like, I can't remember. It's been such a long time since I've seen it. I'm sure there's profanity in it and stuff like that.
Right.
Is that too much?
Well, it's your idea, so is it?
I don't know. I'm kind of asking you. Do I need to say let's do a Disney movie or something?
All right, so let's rule out the developmental psychology dimension of this.
Okay.
There is stuff that's not age appropriate.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
We'll get there. We can talk about that here too.
Yeah. So let's just table that and say we're not talking about showing graphic violence to a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's not appropriate, regardless of whether you're a Christian, for developmental reasons.
Yep.
Right. We're talking about a moral question in regard to what, say, our adolescents are seeing, how they're processing it, and what that says about our understanding of good and evil, appropriate and inappropriate, ethical and unethical, right?
Yep.
From the standpoint of Christian morality, in relation to our idea of purity, which the word purity, these days with the Christian purity culture that we were raised in the 90s and 2000s, is like a trigger word for some people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it is a trigger word. 100% is. Yeah.
And so it's complicated and really needs to be talked about. So
and you're also trying to disciple people into that have had that background too, that are even in that now into that like bubble where they might not watch anything over a PG movie or something like that. And not that we're trying to get people to, but trying to get people to appreciate art and have thought-provoking conversations and, so forth and so on. So,
I wrote an essay in college that wasn't assigned. It was something that I did on my own.
That is very nerdy.
Well, it's very me.
Yeah.
So
I didn't have, I just thought I would just sit around and write an extra essay for fun.
Yeah, I had something that I wanted to think through.
Probably why you're a doctor and I just have my bachelor's degree.
Everyone who has a PhD is a nerd. That's just the way that it works. So,
okay. Okay. I'm hoping someone gives me one day after this podcast goes crazy.
I have no doubt that you could get one, John.
Someone will be like, here's an honorary doctorate.
Honorary? No. You can get one.
But I would prefer an honorary one where I don't have to do any work.
Having done the work, I can understand that position.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I can
That's
understand. Okay. So I wrote this essay, which I titled On Extremism. And I took this verse, a phrase from a verse, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness.
Okay.
And I said the implication of this is that we should be extreme in our approach to separating ourselves from anything that is even remotely questionable. Okay. Right?
Yep.
That's a child's argument. I recognize it for what it is.
Yeah.
But I made that argument.
There's a point in my life I would have been like, amen, brother. I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
Of course. And there are lots of people that would still make that argument. The reason I bring it up is because I want to say that is the position. It's not a nonsense position.
Correct.
It's an understandable approach to...
That's a good point.
...protecting yourself, distancing yourself, staying away from the so-called slippery slope, etc.
Don't drink alcohol because it could end up you becoming a drunkard.
Right.
So I won't even touch it.
Don't even touch it.
Yeah.
Right? Don't watch anything over a PG rated movie because you just don't know where that's going to lead.
Sure.
And there's too much temptation and you can't handle it and so on and so forth. Okay. It's an understandable position. It's a wrong position. It's
You're so much more straightforward than I am. I'm just like, I get it. It's good.
Well, because I'm not like I find it very annoying to have to constantly say, in my opinion. Anything that a human being says is in your opinion. That's what it is. If you're making an assertion, you're not God, so you don't know. So
I'm constantly apologizing and saying, in my opinion.
I'm just gonna.
Sorry. I'm sorry. This is just my opinion. I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna say what I think, and if you need me to circle back and say, well, that was just what I think, then you haven't understand that I am speaking. So that's what I'm doing, right? I'm avoiding the qualifications, right? In my opinion, right? That's a wrong opinion. That's a wrong perspective. It's a not only a poor interpretation of that text, but it's the product of a framework that I don't think can stand scrutiny.
I agree because of the Bible.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's just, people
you're talking about that X-rated book that we read?
People are getting hacked to pieces.
Yeah.
It's in there. People are read a little Song of Solomon, you know what I'm saying? Like,
listen, I'm not going to be just intentionally overly provocative, but I could start listing stories that are so sexually graphic.
Oh, yeah.
And we would never allow our children to read like a smut book that is in very much the same lane.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if the question is, what is it doing to your imagination? What are you seeing while you read this? Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Like,
that's right. And I think whenever we put ourselves in that bubble, we're doing a disservice to our children and others because we can't have those conversations.
And
we feel like I'm not sure how to process it. That's what I was about to say.
Can't process it. Yeah. Don't know how to even be in social situations. You don't have to be in social situations with anybody who doesn't share that morality, who doesn't share. You can't have that conversation. You can't talk. Forget about art. You can't carry on a normal conversation because you're like, oh, I've got to get out of this. But then much more, you can't go into situations of real life where people are living in serious darkness and be able to maintain your identity in the midst of that, which
That's
is
right.
the goal.
That's the goal. So years ago, my then sister-in-law, she has passed away, unfortunately. We fed the homeless regularly, and she had never done it before.
Yeah.
And she went, and halfway through, somewhere in between it, she runs out like weeping because she just being around the words that are being said, the people that she's not used to being around, and she's weeping because she goes, Jesus loves these people and wants to be around them.
Yeah.
What is wrong with me is what she was saying.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what happens, right? Whenever we create that, like we can't just go hang out with,
We not only insulate ourselves, we stunt ourselves. Because what we're talking about is maturity. We're talking about growing to an extent spiritually where we're not always on the precipice, where the slippery slope is a stupid idea.
Yeah.
You're not always just about to fall into everything.
Sure.
So that when a woman caught in adultery is dragged naked before you, you don't run away.
Yeah.
You minister.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good point.
When you're around homeless people, which I happen to be on a weekly basis,
all the time,
whose language is inventive.
That's a good word for it.
You don't have to go like, I just can't be around these people. I'm so offended. But as soon as I'm always offended.
But as soon as they hear that you're a minister or something, they're always apologizing.
That's right. Because
it's annoying.
Because they've been taught. They've been taught that the church is intolerant of them.
Yeah.
Who they are, what they do, how they speak. They have to stop being themselves.
Yep.
They have to figure out, and that's that doesn't happen everywhere. I think here in the South, probably that's more common, where people are sort of raised in church a lot or whatever, or they know. So, sorry about that. I mean, they'll still say it and they'll go, "Sorry, Pastor, sorry."
Yeah.
But they're already putting on a mask. They're putting on a show.
Yeah.
They're not being themselves. They feel unsafe around me, because the church has continued to perpetuate this absolute lie that we can't handle hearing your words.
Yeah.
Your words are so offensive.
Don't you just want to drop a giant F-bomb?
Yes.
And just be like, stop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Be like, I don't give a shit. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Like you just want to be like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because that's not the substance of our relationship to God. That's not the substance of holiness. That's not what purity means. That's not like, okay, so we can talk about the language thing, and I'm sure we'll circle back in other episodes and end up talking about this more. But let me just say, like, what I teach my kids, right? So this great story of my oldest coming home, and she's probably in 5th grade at this point, right?
It's pretty young since she's a senior this year.
Yeah, this was a while ago. And she comes home, and she's kind of like, she's a real bubbly, outgoing kid. And she's real reserved. Like, we can tell something's on her mind. And so her mom, after supper, pulls her aside and goes like, "Hey, what happened at school? What's going on?" And she breaks down, bursts into tears, like, "Mom, I got to tell you something that I did at school." It's like, "Okay, what happened?" And so she tells the story of they're playing kickball on the playground, and there's a bully that steals the kickball from her, and says, she goes over, because I mean, she's not milquetoast by any means. She's like, "Give me the ball back," right? And
she's an outgoing personality. She's not afraid.
And so this kid says, "F you," right?
Sorry. I don't know why I thought that was funny.
Just think about Anna getting cussed out.
Yes, I think that's what it is. Like, give me the ball back.
Yeah.
Deer in the headlights?
So she goes, "No, F you." Right? And so she comes home riddled with guilt that she had said that word.
Yeah.
Right? Well, why is she riddled with guilt? Okay. We have not taught our children anything explicit about language. Gotcha. All they know is we don't talk that way.
Yeah. That's where
I've never had to correct her. I've never had to be like, hey. She just knows that she's internalized this sort of church culture where that language isn't found among us, right? And so her conscience is crushed. And she has to confess this to her mother, and her mother's like, all right, let's bring your dad in here and see what he has to say.
Yeah.
Right? Well, here's what I say to my 5th grade daughter. I say, first of all, we love you. You're okay, right? You're forgiven. We hear your sorrow. We understand.
You
right?
didn't bring a lighter in there and say, getting closer to hell.
Right. Near to the fires of hell. And then I say, okay, here's how we think about words, right? Words are nothing. Words are absolutely nothing. I don't care that you said that word. I only care why you said that word. Did you say that word to hurt another person? That's what we care about.
Yep.
The word, I don't care about the word.
Yeah.
Hearing the word, saying the word is nothing. Are you doing it in order to hurt another human being?
No.
And since that's what you were doing in anger, it's a good thing to be sorry about.
Sure. Yeah.
But other than that, I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? It's a word.
Yeah.
And the church, I think broadly, is just so precious about its language. So, just, oh, Lordy, the words.
I said the word sucks in a sermon, and I was reprimanded by
Were
somebody.
You? Oh, yeah.
So I remember being like, dang.
Yeah.
So, which my own mother probably would have reprimanded me for saying that in a sermon. But I remember being like, dang, okay, I didn't realize I can't say that.
Well, it's not a bad conversation to have. I don't mind meeting people where they are on
this. Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my position is nonetheless, you need to unclench a little bit. You need to, let's just talk. Why?
Let's loosen up those booty cheeks.
Yeah, let's just take a breath and think about what it is that you think you're objecting to, what it is you think you're protecting your kids from, what it is you think your kids aren't hearing in school all day long, every day.
That's right. Yeah, my middle and high schooler remind me of that all the time.
Yeah, and so the question is, how do you process that? How do you be with people in the midst of that? Not, what should you say?
Yes.
What words should you say?
So it is processing through all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we come back to the question of art and film media and song lyrics and all of that kind of stuff, I just want to say, first of all, take a breath, church. Let's think about what it is we're concerned about here. Okay. Ask yourself when it might be appropriate to express yourself with what we call profanity, right? When is it necessary to say something egregious? Yeah. And I would encourage you to read the prophets.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to read the Psalms. I would encourage you to read Paul. Now, the translations hide this because thin-skinned evangelicals are often a part of translating these things for what? Mass consumption.
Yep.
Right? But some of the language is so graphic and so in your face that it gets muted in translation. But the fact of the matter is there's a moment when you make use of the language in order to provoke.
Yeah. That's right.
And that's what art is supposed to be. It's supposed to be provocative. Now, I'm actually, let me add all this because I'm going to sound like the flaming heretic here.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I know.
I have the pitchfork is ready.
Yeah.
Ready to take you down.
You can turn the recording into our shepherds and just see what happens, right?
That's it.
Let me say, I'm completely bored of the way that, say, the F word is now filler language, just like the word or
Yeah.
Right, where it just every single sentence is punctuated by this word. So uninteresting to me. So it doesn't offend me. I don't particularly care where people who have no commitment to my morality speak the way however they speak, right?
That's right.
But when I want to listen to them, when I want to hear them, when I want to engage with them, when that's the punctuation of your sentence, I'm just like, all right, you need to expand your vocabulary.
That's right.
You just need more words. You know what I'm saying?
I've actually said, I've had to say that before. Yeah. All right. So we've been talking for a while.
Okay.
But let's talk about the upper thigh in the room. You know what I'm saying? So we haven't discussed violence much.
Yeah.
But we've discussed language. We've discussed pushing the envelope, I guess, of the bubble of what so many of us are in. But you and I have discussed nudity. We talk about nudity all the time.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But we've actually talked about this
Weekly.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it because it's like, is that different?
Yeah.
And I know folks that would say it's not. Mm-hmm. That everyone has their own sensibilities. Mm-hmm. You're more sensitive to language, which you're not. Someone's more sensitive to violence. This person's more sensitive to nudity or whatever. Mm-hmm. But is there, as we're raising, both of us have boys, as we're raising boys in particular, not mm-hmm. that girls or women can't, whatever, be interested in that. Let's talk about the
bell curve here. The bell curve is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've talked to plenty of men who are very much struggling with pornography and have been for 20, 30 years or whatever. Maybe the women just don't want to come out to me like, hey, John, I'm struggling with pornography. I don't know what I would do.
Well, they probably don't. Those who are struggling, they exist. There's more now than ever.
There is.
Those statistics have changed.
I've seen them, yeah.
And those statistics still bear out the fact that the bell curve is the bell curve.
That's right.
And it's just a much smaller percentage of women who are visually stimulated.
That's right. So I have my boys. Let's do a practical thing. I've been watching The 3 Body Problem. Mm-hmm. Did you watch that yet or not?
We're watching it.
Enjoying it yet or not?
It.
Okay, it's good. So the second episode, maybe there is nudity, but it's not sexual.
Rehydration.
It's It's. I mean, it reminds you of like the Schindler's List type nudity, right? Yeah. Like it's just people are naked. Like it's not sexual or whatever. However, even though it's not, I don't know if I would let my 14-year-old and 16-year-old, and it's certainly not my 10-year-old boy watch that, because I know, and I know this is probably gross, but I remember watching Schindler's List and us pausing it on that, not to like do any, but we're just like, whoa. Yep. And then we kind of moved on, but it wasn't anything it's like super weird, but I remember being very intrigued by that in my friend's house.
National Geographic.
Yes.
Thing.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Because you were totally insulated from it.
Maybe.
Because there's no, you're seeing it for the first time or the third time or whatever it is, right? But it's so taboo. It's so out of bounds
that it's
in Christian culture.
Okay.
That when you come across it in a scenario that's totally non-sexual, as a young man in our culture, you go like,
because it's so. Yeah. But let me ask you this, because we've had this conversation. I vividly remember my first boob that I saw on film that I saw. Yeah. I don't remember vividly my first curse word. I don't remember my first violent action. And so I feel like there was something that clicked there. And are you saying that maybe because I just was so insulated from it that may be the case?
In part, you got to ask yourself, do you think that African or Latin American tribal boys who grow up in cultures where all of the women are topless remember their first boob? No, of course not.
Yeah,
of course not. So yes, there is a cultural dimension to this. That's right. It's taboo. It's hidden. It's forbidden fruit.
Yeah,
right.
And it is much less. Like there is much more language in school. There's much more violence that we see. It's much more all over the place.
Right.
That is far more hidden.
Yes. No. So I think that that's a reality. I think there is an extent to which we can be detrimentally touchy about sexual stuff with our kids. I'm not saying that exposure therapy is the way or something. It's not. Not by any means.
Well, I know what I'm doing with my boys when we go home.
Right. No, but you just have to acknowledge from an anthropological perspective, there are different experiences of these dimensions of human life. My kids, we moved to Peru with my oldest being 17 months old. Mm-hmm. The other two were born in Peru. They all went through Peruvian primary school. And in what we would consider kindergarten, they're coming home with a diagram of the naked male and female body.
Really?
To identify the parts, right?
Wow.
They're just not so high strung about it.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the anatomy. This is what it is, right? So when you see a woman nursing her child everywhere in public,
you're just not.
That's just what it is.
Yeah.
You don't think anything about it, right? So that's real.
That's real. I was in Israel and we were at the Dead Sea, and there is a lady that just stripped naked.
Yeah.
And put on her bathing suit.
Yeah.
In front of and it was just.
Nobody batted an eye.
No, and I can guess where, the regions that they're from, but I guess I won't now. But yeah, it's just different.
Yeah. So those differences are real. That being said, I would share your hesitancy, and here's the reason why. I do not share this hesitancy in regard to, say, violence, just to make the comparison, right? Where there are really violent video games, and we now have a mountain of data to demonstrate that it doesn't produce violent behavior in real life.
Yep.
Right? You have to be already a sociopath for there to be any correlation between those things, right? And I mean, the data is monumental at this point. There's just no doubt that you can play those first-person shooter games and you're never gonna shoot. You're never gonna hit another human. That's just not.
It would horrify you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Whereas there's an equal amount of data to indicate that adolescent boys who are introduced to pornography at a young age will tend towards sexual addiction.
Yeah.
And you just have to be realistic about the brain chemistry here. There is something different. There is a different risk level in being flippant about what your young boys consume.
Sure.
And again, this could be also some young girls. I'm not saying it doesn't matter for girls. I'm just saying we're talking about the bell curve here. We're talking about our boys. Yeah. And we're talking about those who are actually interested in seeing this, right? Like they're like, my girls are just not. Their reaction is different when something comes on screen, when we're watching something, because I'm not hot, like.
But you wouldn't also be super excited about a giant or like a
any
male,
size,
a phallic thing showing up for your daughters. You would probably would you be horrified? A little.
Honestly, I think I would probably laugh. But
okay. I'm just curious if you would be like, "Oh my gosh!"
I wouldn't, knowing ahead of time that was going to happen. You be watching something. No way. But anyway, no. But there's some humor in it, and that's because, I know what their reaction is. Their reaction is, turn it off, right? Whereas the boy's honest reaction is. I wonder if I can turn that back on later.
The only reason I'm embarrassed is because my parents are in the room.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Otherwise, it's like, what was the timestamp on that?
Yeah. Dude, I mean,
yeah.
You remember watching the Wavy channel?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That in the 90s, that you could stare at and you.
So we were economically challenged.
Yeah.
But I had an old black and white TV with the dials on it.
And you could dial it in.
I could dial it in, right? And was all too eager to do so.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I mean, it's like a heat-seeking missile. It's like that's the way that the chemistry of the body and the brain functions for young men.
Yeah.
You have to be an absolute fool not to recognize that adolescence, puberty is leading into a biological imperative. I mean, it is a drive. It is a drive. And you have to be cautious about that because it's not like hearing words or seeing violence. It is not.
So then how do we... Let's maybe start landing here in a sense, because I mean, we're still talking about art and we're talking about introducing our sons.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can see Michelangelo art that has nudity on it, right? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How do we introduce them into not being so, like you say, but also not giving them too much to where, I'm just curious as your thoughts on some of that. I don't know the answer quite. I'm not exactly sure.
I hate for my answer to be boringly the same, but it is to a great extent. I believe discipleship is about intentional processing. To a great extent. It's about paying attention and responding.
Having conversations.
Right. And so if you're, like our generation of parents, I don't know what your parents were like, but there is what is it? It's not a cliche. It's a stereotype of the boomer parent who basically, like, if they give you the birds and the bees conversation, you're lucky. They're just not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of what happened.
Avoid. Be really minimalistic. Use a weird nature analogy. Like, don't talk about it.
What is what was that on Parks and Rec? Planting formicas was that Parks and Rec, or was that?
I don't remember.
I think it was about Ron. Can you plant my formicas? And I don't remember. It was Anne when she was trying to find a baby daddy, and there was some plant analogy there.
Yeah. But I think it is about that intentionality.
Yeah.
That's good. With your kids where, and again, I'm not talking about exposure therapy. I'm talking about, okay, this is something that you saw, or this is something that we're choosing to watch, which has a thing. And so, all right, now what do we do with this?
Yep.
Right? Rather than being constantly freaking out and like, turn it off, right? It forms in them
and they're going to see it.
They're going
to see it
anyway.
Have you been on even Instagram, right? Like something chill like that.
Listen, that is not about defeatism. That is not like, okay, well then I'm not going to, it doesn't matter anyway. I'm saying be intentional. Because this is the world we live in.
Yeah.
Right? There have to be moments where you go like, okay, so now what?
Yeah.
What do we think? What do we say? How do we respond? And just as I suppose, I really don't know, but I have a pretty educated guess that many parents simply do not know how to deal with their sons using pornography.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Right. But again, the statistics are clear. There is a massive number of your kids that are using pornography.
Yeah.
They are, right? And so if you don't have a conversation about it, if you don't know how to process it when they get caught, if all you do is say like, that's bad, don't do that, you need to confess or what, like that, none of that is helping them understand what this is about, what the difference is between, all of that and say art. And no, that is not art.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and say.
Well, it depends on where you're at, because I was in the Portland Art Museum with a group of Chinese students, and they had the top floor. I didn't go in there, though apparently a bunch of the students snuck in to art. And it was, from hearing, it was extremely graphic.
Of course. Yeah.
But
of course that stuff exists.
Yeah, I know.
And of course there's some kind of line somewhere between whatever. But let's not be modest here.
Yeah.
We're talking about the porn industry. That ain't art.
Yeah, I agree.
For the very same reasons
all
that
it is
we were
is
talking about.
Because it's marketed towards a specific thing to get you to have a specific. Yeah, I agree.
And
so this is a good
and designed by social psychologists to consume your brain.
Yep.
Like this is no trivial thing.
Sure.
It's no joke.
Yep.
Worlds apart, as far as I'm concerned, between that and art.
I agree. So, as an ending, I think the processing thing is just such a huge part of it.
Yeah.
When the discipleship, whether it's helping friends, helping the people in your church or whatever, develop an appreciation for God's beautiful design of art and all this kind of stuff. It is that creating spaces to process, or if it's your sons or daughters who are looking at challenging, like, I think that's it. And that's difficult, and it takes a lot of intentionality, and it also can be very difficult to bring up those conversations.
Nobody's saying that discipleship is easy.
It's not easy at all.
Nobody is saying that. You probably haven't read the Gospels if your conclusion is discipleship is supposed to be easy. Intentionality is uncomfortable, awkward, frustrating, inconvenient.
I can't talk to I have tried personally to have many conversations, anything sexual at all, with my kids, and it's like they are red in the face and they
don't want to talk about it.
They clam up, and so it's like, even I'm not excited about having the conversations necessarily, but even that, it's like, this is not easy. Like,
no.
I'm gonna have to be very persistent, and
that's right, and find the moment. Right, there is a developmental continuum or trajectory where, and it's actually somewhat different. There's some strange things going on in the culture that are delaying development for young people. That are producing lower rates of sexual activity, sexual interest. Right, all of this stuff is real. It's our responsibility to pay attention. And meet our kids in those moments where they're ready. But we've done other things too. Like if it's just out of the blue, if it's like, all right, now we're going to have a serious conversation about sex. And it's like, well, we never have conversations about other stuff.
That's what happened to me, as like Dad was like, I was in homeschool and he's like, hey, we're at some chapter. Your mom wants to talk to me about this. And like, we've never had any of these conversations. And we both just were like, yeah, we know. Yeah. And that was it.
Yeah. Right, because there's no practice of formative conversation already in place where you're talking about all kinds of stuff. Like, what do you think of that? What should we do? How should we respond to that? Should we watch that again? How are you feeling? All of that stuff is like, if you're not doing that, then don't expect to be able to lob in the sex grenade.
Hey, that's the name of my next band, Sex Grenade.
I'm guessing that's already trademarked somewhere.
Probably is. Yeah. We should have just ended the episode. Oh, that's it?
That's it, man.
That's that good?
That's Word.y.
That's Word.y. That's Sex Grenade. That's it.